Russian bought and paid for misinformation dossier that was unverifiable because it was all debunked and all untrue, used before a FISA court saying it's verified to spy on your dad. Now we have this filing by Durham. Your take, because it's your family that is constantly, that was 3 years of your father's presidency.
3 years of his presidency, 30 years from me under congressional testimony. The witch hunt never ends. They still talk about Russia, Russia, Russia as though it's real. But the second Hillary Clinton's campaign lawyer gets indicted for lying, when they're working with a government tech agency that was not only monitoring candidate Donald Trump, but President Donald Trump, actually spying on the President of the United States, the media who love to talk about these conspiracy theories have suddenly gone silent, Sean. Where's Bob Woodward? Because I heard every time my father put out a tweet for the last 5 years, it's worse than Watergate. Well, this actually is worse than Watergate, and yet all of those clowns are strangely silent, just like our media, because they can't run cover for this. They know they've been caught, just like they're running cover for Justin Trudeau. And rather than talking about him acting like a despot and a tyrant, they're so busy doxing people who donated $40 to the Freedom Convoy and to the truckers in Canada actually fighting for freedom. That's how sick, that's how discredited our mainstream media is right now.
You know, when you look at the filing of John Durham, and by the way, a glacier moves faster than he does, but he actually said that the defendant's billing records reflect that he was billing the Clinton campaign for his work. He assembled and conveyed allegations about your father to the FBI of at least two specific clients, one a technology executive at a U.S.-based internet company, and the Clinton campaign. That's in Durham's writing. And then these allegations, quote, his words, were exploited from internet data mined from a particular healthcare provider, Trump Tower, Donald Trump's Central Park West apartment building, and the executive office of the President of the United States. In other words, they were mining and exploiting data from your father's White House, where you worked every day. Now, they didn't get into the server. I think that's pretty clear. But they apparently were able to mine information about what people were looking at and what websites they were going to make inferences so they could exploit them and help their client, Hillary Clinton. That's how I interpret it.
100%, Sean. What they did was they create just enough that they can leak it to their friendly reporters over at the Washington Post and the New York Times, who jump on it as though it's the gospel, right? They won't bother to actually check because it's against Trump. It's against conservatism. It's against Republicans. So they'll write everything. That article is then used by the CIA or the FBI to drum up the investigation, which then is back leaked to the New York Times, and they create their vicious cycle of nonsense and lies. Notice now that it's all coming out, they won't even look at it. The amount of minutes can be counted on my one hand that was covered by the major networks, and Hillary Clinton's lawyer's been indicted. More importantly, it seems as though Jake Sullivan, who would be like the Michael Flynn equivalent in Joe Biden's White House, was aware or at least knew about it, if not acted on it, and he's the guy actually negotiating with Russia right now, the head of the NSA type. I mean, think about that for a second. So the guy that created the Russia boogeyman for the last 5 years is now the guy apparently dealing with Russia on Ukraine when we're at the brink of war. You don't think Russia knows that? You don't think that this guy made them the world enemy, or certainly an enemy of the United States in the mind of the American people, and now he's negotiating with it? I mean, this is insanity. And again, if we had a real media, instead of activists, instead of propagandists, they would be out there asking these questions. Instead, they're silent. They're literally still bringing up my testimony from like 5 years ago to try to make that into a story when it's been debunked and is totally ridiculous. That's the state of our media. They are a disgrace to our country and democracy.
Your father would never negotiate with Putin while he had a gun to the world's head by putting all his troops and military equipment on the border. He'd say, you want to talk? We'll talk after you pull your military back. One last thing. So the New York Times very cleverly points out in the Durham filing, the word infiltrate never existed. Kash Patel characterized it that way. And spy is never in there. No, they didn't say spy. They said exploit. They didn't say infiltrate. They said they data mined. So it's not, we're going to play word games now when clearly it was obvious what happened here. And I got about 20 seconds.
Sean, they spied on the President of the United States. They did that knowingly. They did that with other government contractors, and no one's asking a single question about whether this is real. Imagine it was a Republican administration. Imagine this was Donald Trump to incoming President Joe Biden or former President Barack Obama. Imagine what the stories would be. Imagine their level of outrage. It would know no bounds. There would be no other story, Sean.
Yeah, imagine if Hunter's last name was Trump versus Biden. Another great point. Don Jr., thank you.